The sun rose over redemption like it always did, indifferent to the men who would die before it set again. Thomas Grant had seen 43 such sunrises in service of the law, and his body carried the proof and scars that ached with the morning cold. At 68 years old, his hands trembled as he buttoned his shirt, the right one worse than the left, a palsy that had crept into his fingers like an unwelcome guest over the past 2 years. He stood before the cracked mirror in his modest room above the jailhouse, studying the stranger who had replaced the man he remembered. Deep lines carved canyons around eyes that had seen too much. Silver stubble covered a jaw that no longer held the sharp angles of youth. The badge in his hand felt heavier than it used to, or perhaps he had simply grown weaker. He pinned it to his chest with fingers that refused to cooperate, cursing under his breath when it took 3 attempts. The office below was a museum of violence domesticated into memory. Wanted posters yellowed on the walls, their subjects long dead or imprisoned. A gun rack held weapons from a dozen arrests, each one a story he would rather forget. But it was the photographs that demanded his attention this morning, as they did every morning. They hung in a crooked line above his desk, images from another lifetime. The first showed a younger Thomas Grant, perhaps 28, standing ramrod straight in a crisp Deputy U.S. Marshal uniform. Beside him stood Elijah Stone, a black man in his 60s, whose eyes held the kind of wisdom that could only be earned through surviving decades in a country that wanted him dead. The old man's hand rested on young Grant's shoulder, a gesture that seemed protective and proud in equal measure. Grant stared at that photograph until his eyes burned, remembering. His mind drifted back across the years to a dusty Kansas morning in 1850. Grant had been 25, then angry at a world that had taken his parents to fever and left him with nothing but rage and a talent for violence. He had been practicing his draw behind a stable in Dodge City, driven by some foolish notion that speed could fill the emptiness inside him. Elijah had appeared like a ghost, materializing from the morning shadows. The old man moved with a silence that seemed impossible for someone his age. "You planning to shoot yourself in the foot, boy?" Elijah's voice had been dry as desert wind. "Because that's what happens when you draw angry." Grant had spun hand, already moving toward his gun, but Elijah was faster. Not because his hand moved quicker, but because he had never moved at all. He simply stood there, utterly still, utterly unafraid, and somehow that stillness was more intimidating than any weapon. "Who are you?" Grant had demanded. "Name's Elijah Stone, and you're Thomas Grant. I've been watching you practice for 3 days now. You're fast, maybe the fastest I've seen in a decade. But fast don't mean smart, and it sure don't mean you'll live long enough to matter. I don't need a lecture from some old man." Elijah had smiled at that, a knowing expression that carried neither anger nor offense. "No, you need something more than a lecture. You need a choice. You can keep getting faster until somebody faster comes along and plants you. Or you can learn to be smart, to read men, to know what they'll do before they do it. Smart men live to get old. Fast men die pretty." "I'll be both," Grant had said with the arrogance of youth. "Then you'll have to learn from someone who already made that journey. And I'm offering, one time. Right now, you walk away, I won't ask again." Grant had stayed, and Elijah Stone had spent the next 5 years turning an angry young gunslinger into something resembling a lawman. He taught Grant to watch breathing patterns, to notice which way a man's weight shifted before he drew. He taught him that the fastest way to win a gunfight was to make the other man doubt he wanted one in the first place. But most importantly, he taught him mercy. "Every man you kill takes a piece of you with him," Elijah had said during one late-night discussion over weak coffee. "You'll carry them all, their faces, their last words, the way they fell. It never leaves you, so you make damn sure every trigger you pull is worth the weight." Grant blinked, pulling himself back to the present. The photograph of young Thomas and old Elijah stared back at him across the gulf of decades. Elijah had died in his sleep in 1878, peaceful and quiet, leaving Grant with a marriage and a burden of wisdom he was still trying to live up to. He moved to the window, looking down at Main Street as redemption slowly woke. Shopkeepers swept their porches. A wagon rolled past its wheels, cutting familiar ruts into familiar dirt. Mrs. Chen hung laundry outside her boarding house sheets, snapping in the morning breeze like surrender flags. This was the town he had protected for 5 years now, ever since he had retired from the U.S. Marshal Service and taken the easier job of small-town sheriff. Except it had not been easier. Not with her here. Grant's eyes found the figure almost automatically as they did every morning. Claire Yang sat on the steps of Walker's saloon watching the sunrise with a stillness that reminded him uncomfortably of Elijah. She wore the same black duster, she always wore the same wide-brimmed hat that kept her face in shadow. To most of Redemption, she was simply the quiet Chinese woman who worked odd jobs and bothered no one. They did not know what Grant knew. They had not seen what he had seen. 3 years ago, Grant had been tracking a wanted man through the New Mexico territory. The trail had gone cold near a burned-out settlement called San Sebastian, a place where something terrible had happened 4 years prior. The locals would not speak of it directly, but Grant had pieced together the story from whispers and official reports. A gang led by a man named Captain Miller had massacred a neighborhood of Chinese immigrants one night in 1889. Whole families killed. And then over the following months, every member of Miller's gang had died. 12 men, 12 executions. The killer had left a calling card at each scene, a single black orchid, a flower that did not grow naturally anywhere in the territory. Black orchid. The name had become legend. A ghost. A demon. An angel of vengeance depending on who told the story. The U.S. Marshal Service wanted her but could never find her. She had simply vanished after the last killing, becoming a campfire tale that lawmen told to spook each other. Grant had found her by accident. He had been following his wanted man's trail when he came across fresh graves at the edge of a dried creek bed. 3 bodies buried shallow. He had investigated expecting his fugitive, but found instead 3 different men all wanted for various crimes across the territory, all killed with precision shots to center mass, all dead less than a day. He had followed the tracks away from the graves and found her 2 miles distant, sitting beside a dying campfire staring at nothing. She held a Colt Peacemaker in her lap, but made no move to raise it as Grant approached with his own weapon drawn. "You're Black Orchid," he had said. Statement, not question. She had looked up at him with eyes that held no fear, no defiance, nothing at all, just emptiness. "Yes. I'm taking you in." "All right." Her acceptance had surprised him. He had expected a fight, expected the legendary speed that the stories attributed to her. Instead, she had simply stood, set her gun on the ground, and held out her wrists for shackles. Grant had stared at her for a long moment, recognition stirring. She looked exhausted in a way that went deeper than physical tiredness. This was the exhaustion of a soul that had burned too hot for too long and now held only ash. "Why'd you do it?" he had asked. "Those 12 men. They killed my family, my husband, my daughter. She was 7 years old." "So you hunted them all down?" "Every single one. It took me almost a year. I would do it again." Grant had looked at this woman, at the emptiness in her eyes, and had seen himself, seen the angry young man he had been before Elijah had offered him a different path. And he had made a choice that would define the next 3 years of his life. "I'm going to offer you something nobody offered me," he had said. "A chance. You come with me to Redemption. You live quiet. You don't touch a gun. You don't hurt anyone. You keep that vow and I'll let you disappear. You break it and I'll bring you in myself, dead or alive. Those are the terms." She had studied him for a long moment. "Why would you do this?" "Because someone did it for me once. His name was Elijah Stone. He saw an angry young killer and taught him to be something better. I never got the chance to repay that debt. Maybe I can pass it forward instead." Claire Yang had accepted his offer. She had kept her vow. For 3 long years, she had been a model of reformed behavior. She worked at the general store, at the stable, anywhere that needed an extra hand. She spoke little, smiled never, but caused no trouble. The townspeople accepted her presence the way they accepted the weather as simply another feature of their landscape. But Grant knew what lived beneath that surface calm. He had seen her reflexes once when a drunk cowboy had stumbled into her at the saloon. The man had grabbed her arm more to steady himself than anything threatening, but her response had been instantaneous. She had moved faster than Grant's eyes could track, breaking the man's grip and putting him on the ground before either of them had fully processed what was happening. She had stopped herself from following through, from delivering the kind of strike that would have crushed the man's throat, but it had been close. She was a loaded gun with the safety on. And Grant watched her, constantly waiting to see if that safety would fail. A knock at his office door pulled him from his thoughts. He called out permission to enter, and the door swung open to reveal his nephew, Billy Porter. The boy was 19, all gangly limbs and earnest enthusiasm. He had arrived in Redemption 2 weeks ago, fresh from his mother's funeral back in Missouri. Grant's sister had died of consumption, and with her last breath had asked Grant to look after her son. The boy had romantic notions about the Old West, about lawmen and outlaws and glory. He wore 2 pistols on his hips, both polished to a shine, both completely unnecessary. "Morning, Uncle Thomas," Billy said, grinning. "I've been practicing my draw like you asked." "Want to see?" "No," Grant said flatly. "What I want is for you to take those fool pistols off and learn to do paperwork. Being a lawman is 90% boredom and 10% terror. The terror only lasts a few seconds, but the paperwork is forever." Billy's face fell. "But the stories say you were the fastest gun in Arizona territory, that you beat Black Orchid herself in a draw back in '85. Grant suppressed a sigh. The legend had grown over the years, twisted by retelling until it bore no resemblance to truth. "Those stories are wrong, Billy. I never fought Black Orchid. The person I faced was some young fool using the name to build his reputation. And I didn't beat him because I was faster. I beat him because I talked him into surrendering. Words won that fight, not bullets." "But what about all your other gunfights, the ones with the Dalton gang, the showdown in Tombstone?" "The Dalton fight was 6 deputies against 4 outlaws in a dark barn. Nobody was fast. We were all just scared and lucky. And Tombstone," Grant shook his head, "I arrested a drunk card cheat who couldn't hit the floor if he fell on it. The newspaper made it sound like the OK Corral, but it was really just sad." Billy's disappointment was palpable. He wanted his uncle to be a legend, not a tired old man with shaking hands who won fights with talking. "The world doesn't need more fast guns," Grant continued, his voice gentler. "It needs good men who know when to draw and when to holster. Elijah Stone taught me that. He was the real hero. Saved my life more times than I can count, and never once fired a shot in anger. That's the man you should want to be." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of boots on the stairs. Heavy, measured footfalls that spoke of someone who did not need to announce themselves. A moment later, Deputy Frank Reed appeared in the doorway. Reed was 30 years old, all business, wearing the star of the U.S. Marshal Service on his vest. "Sheriff Grant," Reed said with a nod, then noticing Billy's private conversation. "Billy was just leaving," Grant said, catching his nephew's eye. "Go help Mrs. Chen with her laundry. She's been kind to us. We owe her kindness back." Billy left reluctantly, casting glances over his shoulder. Grant waited until his footsteps faded before gesturing Reed inside. "You look like you're bringing bad news," Grant said. "Let's have it." Reed pulled a folded telegraph paper from his jacket. "Colonel Jackson Cole. You remember him?" The name hit Grant like a fist to the gut. He sat down heavily in his desk chair, suddenly aware of every one of his 68 years. "I remember. He's out, early release 3 months ago for good behavior. And Sheriff, he's been gathering men. Last count puts him at 15 guns. All headed this way." Grant stared at the wall, seeing not the peeling paint, but a dusty street in a town called Silver Creek. The year had been 1882, and Grant had been tracking Cole for the murder of a land office clerk during a robbery. He had found him in that nowhere town, challenged him to surrender. Cole had refused. They had faced each other in the street at high noon like something out of a dime novel. Grant had been 53, then still fast enough to believe his hand could solve his problems. They had drawn. Cole had been faster. The bullet had taken Grant in the left shoulder, spinning him, dropping him. He had lain in the dirt watching Cole approach with gun raised to finish him when Elijah had appeared. The old man, who Grant thought was 3 towns away, had simply materialized, firing a single shot that had knocked Cole's gun from his hand without touching flesh. "Boy's learned his lesson," Elijah had said to Cole. "You can learn yours in a cell, or you can learn it in the ground. Choose quick." Cole had chosen the cell. 11 years in territorial prison. And now he was free, and according to Reed's intelligence, he was coming here. "Why redemption?" Grant asked, though he already knew the answer. Reed glanced toward the window, toward the street where Claire Yang could be seen sweeping the porch of the general store. "Because she's here. Black Orchid. Cole's younger brother James was captain and Miller's second in command at San Sebastian. She killed him." "Of course." The sins of the past never stayed buried no matter how deep you dug the hole. How long do we have? Grant asked. Riders spotted them 2 days ride out. They'll be here by sundown tomorrow, maybe sooner if they push hard. Grant nodded slowly, his mind already working through scenarios. None of them ended well. You here to take her in? Make this official. I'm here to offer you backup. The Marshal Service knows what you've been doing, Sheriff, protecting her. We've been letting it slide because she's kept quiet and you're a respected man. But if Cole forces a confrontation, blood will spill. Innocent blood, most likely. We need to decide how to handle this before it gets that far. You mean you want me to hand her over? Reed had the grace to look uncomfortable. I mean, we need to consider all options. She's wanted for 12 murders, Grant. Justified or not, the law is clear. And if protecting her means this town burns, you need to ask yourself what Elijah would do. The invocation of his mentor's name sparked anger in Grant's chest. Elijah would ask me what kind of man I want to be, whether I keep my promises or break them when they become inconvenient. I made a vow to her, same as she made one to me. Then you're going to have to face Cole. He shaked again, and Sheriff, no disrespect intended, but you couldn't beat him 11 years ago, when you were younger and steadier. What makes you think you can now? Grant had no answer to that. His right hand trembled even now, resting on the desk. He had not drawn his gun in anger in over a year, and the last time he had practiced his shots had grouped wide enough to embarrass him. I don't think I can beat him, Grant admitted, but maybe I can buy time for this town to evacuate, get the innocent folks clear before the storm hits. Reed studied him for a long moment. You're planning to die, aren't you? One last stand. Go out like a hero. I'm planning to do my job. What happens after that is between me and God. Reed stood shaking his head. You're a stubborn old fool, Thomas Grant. Elijah picked well. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'll stand with you. Cole wants a fight, he'll get one. Just wish the odds were better. After Reed left, Grant sat alone in his office, listening to the sounds of redemption, waking fully to the day. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a small wooden box, running his fingers over the carved surface. Inside lay a letter written in his wife's hand, dated 6 years prior. Martha had been dying, then consumption, eating her from the inside, and she had known her time was short. He unfolded the paper, reading words he had memorized but needed to see. My dearest Thomas, by the time you read this, I will be with our Lord, free from pain at last. I do not fear death. I fear only leaving you alone, because I know what you will do. You will work. You will bury yourself in duty the way you always have, using the badge as armor against grief. I am asking you, my love, to stop. Retire. Hang up your gun and live whatever years remain to you in peace. You have given enough, bled enough, lost enough. The law will find someone else to carry its burden. Let it. Remember that you are more than a lawman. You are a good man who chose a hard path because you believed it was right. But martyrdom is not righteousness. Dying for a cause is easy. Living for one is harder. Be the man I fell in love with. The one who laughed. The one who dreamed of a little house by a river somewhere quiet. Be that man, Thomas. For me. All my love. Martha Grant folded the letter carefully, placing it back in the box. He had read it 100 times. Had promised himself 100 times that he would honor her wishes. And yet here he sat, preparing for a fight that would likely kill him, unable to walk away from a promise to a stranger that outweighed a promise to his wife. What kind of man did that make him? The kind Elijah had raised, perhaps. The kind who kept his word even when it cost everything. Grant stood, strapping on his gun belt. The weight settled familiar on his hips, the Colt Peacemaker that had been his companion for 20 years riding comfortable in its holster. He checked the cylinder out of habit, counting 6 rounds, then made his way downstairs and out into the morning sun. Redemption's Main Street stretched before him, a ribbon of dust and hope, running between false-fronted buildings that pretended to permanence. Grant walked its length, nodding to shopkeepers, tipping his hat, to ladies playing the role of the confident lawman, even as his hands shook and his heart raced. He found Edith Walker sweeping the porch of her saloon. Edie was 65, only 3 years younger than Grant, and had run this establishment for 3 decades. She had been beautiful once, and traces of that beauty lingered in the fine bones of her face, the grace of her movements. They had known each other for 40 years, since the days when she danced in a Tombstone saloon, and Grant had been a young deputy trying to keep the peace. "Morning, Tom," she said, pausing her sweeping. "You look troubled." "When do I not look troubled?" "Fair point." She leaned on her broom, studying him with eyes that saw too much. This about Claire? Grant should not have been surprised. Edie had always been able to read him. "How'd you know?" "Because you've been watching her more than usual these past few days. And because I saw that Marshall ride into town. Doesn't take much to connect the pieces." She gestured toward the saloon's interior. "Come on. Coffee's hot, and the morning's still private enough for honest words." They sat at a corner table away from the windows. Edie poured thick black coffee into chip mugs while Grant gathered his thoughts. "Jackson Cole's coming," he said finally. "He's out of prison, and he's coming for her." Edie absorbed this with the calm of someone who had survived the boom and bust of a dozen mining towns. "And you're planning to stop him?" "I gave my word." "Your word will get you killed, Tom. Cole beat you once. He'll beat you again." "Probably, Tim. And you're fine with that." Grant wrapped his hands around the coffee mug, grateful for its warmth. "I'm tired, Edie. Bone tired. Been wearing this badge since I was 28 years old. 43 years of other people's violence. I've buried more friends than I can count. Lost Martha, lost Elijah. Most days I don't even know why I keep getting up." "So you're looking for an honorable way to stop?" "I'm looking to keep one last promise before I go." "Is that so wrong?" Edie reached across the table, covering his trembling hand with her steady one. "It's noble. It's stupid. It's exactly what I'd expect from you." "But Tom, that girl in there," she nodded toward the corner of the saloon where Claire Yang sat in her usual spot, so still, she seemed part of the furniture. "She's not your redemption. She's not Elijah's ghost. She's just a woman who made terrible choices and is trying to live with them. You can't save her by dying for her." "Maybe not, but I can give her the chance to save herself. That's more than anyone gave me." "Elijah gave you that chance, and I'm passing it forward. That's how this works, Edie. We carry each other. We bear witness. We give second chances because someone gave us one first." They sat in companionable silence, drinking coffee that had gone bitter from sitting too long on the stove. Finally, Edie spoke again. "I'm not leaving when Cole comes. This is my place, built it board by board. If it burns, I burn with it." "Edie, that's foolish. No more foolish than what you're planning. We're old Tom. We've earned the right to be foolish about the things that matter." Grant wanted to argue but could not find the words. She was right. They had earned this. The right to stand for something even if standing meant falling. Movement at the corner table drew his attention. Claire had risen, moving with that economical grace that characterized everything she did. She crossed to their table, and for the first time Grant could remember she spoke first. "Sheriff Grant," a word, privately. Her voice was quiet, but it carried weight. Grant exchanged a glance with Edie, then stood following Claire out onto the porch. The morning sun threw their shadows long across the dusty street. "You know," Claire said. It was not a question. "I know." "Then you should arrest me now. Take me in before Cole arrives. It's the only way to save this town." Grant studied her face, seeing past the careful, neutral mask to the fear beneath. She was terrified not of death, but of being the cause of death, of watching innocence suffer for her sins. "I made you a promise," he said. 3 years without violence. You've kept that promise. I'm not breaking mine. Your promise will kill people, Sheriff. Good people. Is that worth it? My promise gives you a chance to prove you've changed. That's worth dying for, yes." Claire looked away, jaw tight. "I don't understand you. Why do you care I'm a killer? I murdered 12 men. Most lawmen would have shot me on sight." Grant leaned against the porch railing, feeling the old wood creak under his weight. "When I was 25 years old, I killed a man in a fair fight. He called me out over a card game, drew first, and I was faster. Legal. Justified. I still see his face when I close my eyes. Still hear the sound he made when he hit the ground." He paused, marshaling memories he rarely examined. "I went on a tear after that. Picked fights, looked for excuses to draw. Killed 3 more men in 6 months, all legal, all justified, and all eating me alive from the inside. I was drowning in blood and did not know how to stop. What changed? Elijah Stone. He found me drunk in an alley, gun to my own head, ready to end it. He talked me down, took me to his home, fed me, let me sleep off the whiskey, and when I woke up, he offered me a choice. Grant met her eyes, willing her to understand. He said, you can keep being what you are, fast and angry and dead before 30, or you can learn to be something else, something better. I'll teach you if you want, but you have to choose. And you chose. I chose. Took me 5 years to learn what he was teaching, to understand that being fast meant nothing if you didn't know when to be slow, that justice wasn't about punishment, but about protecting people, that every life mattered, even the ones that seemed beyond saving. Grant straightened his back, protesting. You made a choice 3 years ago when you accepted my offer. You've been living that choice every day since. Cole Cumming doesn't change that. It just tests it. And I believe you'll pass that test. Claire's composure cracked just for a moment. Her eyes glistened. And if the old me comes back when Cole arrives, if I pick up a gun, then I'll do what I promised. I'll stop you. One way or another. You can't stop me, Sheriff. You're not fast enough anymore. It was stated as simple fact without cruelty. Grant appreciated the honesty. Maybe not, he admitted, but I can try, and sometimes trying is enough. A commotion down the street interrupted them. Billy Porter came running, his face flushed with excitement and fear. Uncle Thomas, he shouted, waving his arm. Riders on the North Ridge. I count at least 12, maybe more. Grant's stomach dropped. They were early. He had hoped for more time. He should have known better. Hope was a luxury lawmen could not afford. He turned to Claire. Get inside, stay out of sight, and remember your promise. Sheriff, I can help. I can talk to Cole, try to reason with him. No, you being visible just provokes him. Let me handle this. Grant moved to the middle of Main Street, Billy at his side. The boy's hand hovered near his pistol, eager and dangerous. Grant put a restraining hand on his shoulder. Easy, Billy. Don't draw unless I tell you. Understand? But Uncle Thomas, there's 12 of them. We need every gun we can get. What we need is steady nerves and clear heads. Your mother made me promise to keep you safe. I aim to honor that. The riders appeared at the end of Main Street, a line of hard men on harder horses. They walked their mounts slow, letting the town see them, letting fear build. Grant counted 13 men total, not 12. Unlucky number. Unlucky day. At the center of the line rode a man Grant recognized even across the distance of years and dust. Colonel Jackson Cole sat his horse like he had been born there, spine straight, gray, Confederate officer's coat faded but clean. His hair had gone white in the years since Grant had last seen him, but the cold intelligence in his eyes remained sharp. The riders halted 30 feet from where Grant stood. The silence stretched taut as a hangman's rope. Then Cole dismounted, his movements precise, and walked forward alone. His men stayed mounted, hands near weapons, but not touching them yet. Sheriff Thomas Grant, Cole said, his voice carrying the refined accent of an educated Southerner. It's been 11 years. You look older. And you look meaner, Cole. Prison didn't soften you. Cole smiled, but it held no warmth. Prison gave me clarity. Time to think, to understand what matters. And what I understand now is that justice is a lie we tell ourselves to feel better about vengeance. You're here for the woman, Black Orchid. I'm here for the creature who murdered my brother. Yes. Grant shifted slightly, putting himself more directly between Cole and the saloon where Claire waited. She's under my protection. She served her time in her own way. She's earned peace. Peace, Cole's laugh was bitter. My brother is in the ground. His widow is alone. His children grew up without a father. Where's their peace, Sheriff? Your brother killed innocent people, Cole. Families, children. He earned what he got. By whose judgment? Hers. She's no judge. She's a killer hiding behind your mercy. Billy suddenly stepped forward, his voice cracking with youth and fury. You don't talk to the sheriff like that. He's a better man than you'll ever be. Grant grabbed Billy's arm, pulling him back, but the damage was done. One of Cole's men, a nervous-looking kid not much older than Billy, took the forward movement as a threat. His hand went to his gun. The world slowed. Grant saw it happening, saw the chain of events that would lead to blood, and knew he was too old, too slow to stop it. Billy, reacting on instinct and poor training, drew his own pistol. The movement was clumsy, unpracticed. His hand shook. The shot, when it came, was deafening in the morning quiet. But it was not Billy who fired. One of Cole's men, a scarred veteran named Samuel Cross, had drawn and fired in pure reflex at Billy's threatening movement. The bullet took Billy in the right shoulder, spinning him, dropping him to the dirt. The boy cried out more in shock than pain, his unfired pistol falling from nerveless fingers. Grant dropped beside him, pressing his hand to the wound. Blood welled hot and red between his fingers. The injury was not fatal, but it was bad. Billy would need a doctor, needed one now, or shock and blood loss would finish what the bullet had started. "You son of a bitch," Grant said, looking up at Cole. His voice was steady despite the rage burning in his chest. "He's a boy. Just a boy." "He drew on my men," Cole replied, unmoved. "That's his mistake, not mine." Grant helped Billy sit up, the boy's face pale and sweating. "Billy, can you walk?" "I think so. Uncle Thomas, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "Hush now, get to Doc Henderson's. Move slow and keep pressure on that wound. Go." Billy stumbled away, supported by shopkeepers who had emerged from cover. The street emptied quickly as townsfolk retreated indoors, leaving only Grant standing alone before 13 armed men. Deputy Reed appeared at Grant's side, materializing from wherever he had been observing. His gun was drawn but pointed at the ground. "This can still end peacefully, Cole," Reed said with the authority of federal law. "Stand down. Face trial for assault. We'll work something out." "I'm not interested in trials, Deputy. I'm interested in the woman. Hand her over and we ride out. Simple." "Nothing about this is simple," Grant said, straightening despite the protest of his back. "And I'm not handing over anyone. You want her, you go through me." Cole's hand moved to rest on the butt of his pistol, a casual gesture that promised violence. "I beat you once before, Grant. I was younger then. So were you. But I've spent 11 years practicing in a cell while you've spent them getting old. How do you think this ends? With one of us dead, probably, but not before I've said what needs saying." Grant took a step forward, his own hand near his gun. His heart hammered, but his voice remained steady. This was the moment, the precipice. Everything balanced on what happened in the next few seconds. "You want to know about your brother Cole, I'll tell you. I read the reports from San Sebastian. I talked to survivors. James Cole wasn't just following orders. He wasn't a good man led astray. He was the one who laughed while families burned. He was the one who shot a 7-year-old girl while her mother watched. He was a monster, and the woman who killed him was acting in self-defense after he murdered her family." Cole's face hardened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. And deep down, so do you. That's why you're rarely here. Not for justice. For absolution. You want to believe your brother was worth avenging so you don't have to face the truth that you loved a killer. Shut your mouth, old man. The truth hurts, doesn't it? Your brother deserved what he got, and you know it. So go ahead, draw on me, kill an old lawman in the street, become exactly what your brother was, or choose different. Choose to walk away. Choose to let go." For a long, breathless moment, Cole's hand trembled over his gun. The muscle in his jaw worked. His men watched, waiting for the signal that would turn this street into an abattoir. Then Cole's hand moved, not away from his gun, toward it. Grant's own hand dropped to his Colt, but he knew he was too slow, knew his trembling fingers would fumble the draw, knew he was about to die in the dust of a nowhere town, just like he had always feared. The shot rang out. Grant flinched, expecting pain, expecting darkness, but neither came. Instead, Cole staggered back, his hand empty, his gun spinning away across the dirt. A second shot had knocked the weapon from his grip without touching flesh. Grant spun, searching for the shooter, and found her standing on the saloon porch. Claire Yang held a rifle, smoke curling from its barrel. Her face was calm, her stance perfect, and Grant's heart sank even as relief flooded through him. She had broken her vow. She had picked up a gun. 3 years of restraint shattered in a moment. Claire lowered the rifle slowly, meeting Grant's eyes across the distance. In her gaze, he saw apology, resignation, and a terrible sadness. "I'm sorry, Sheriff," she called out, "but I couldn't let you die for me, not like that." Cole clutched his wrist where the impact had numbed it, staring at Claire with recognition and hatred mingled. "Black Orchid," he said, the name a curse, "finally showing your face." Claire descended the saloon steps with the same measured grace she brought to every movement, the rifle held loose in her hands, barrel pointing safely at the ground. Grant watched her approach, his mind racing through calculations of how badly this had just escalated. The vow was broken. 3 years of careful restraint undone in a single moment of protective instinct. Cole massaged his wrist, his cold eyes tracking Claire's progress. The legend herself. I was beginning to think you were just a ghost. A story told to frighten children and comfort widows. I'm real enough, Claire said, stopping 10 feet from Grant, and I'm done hiding. Claire, no, Grant said quietly. Go back inside. Let me handle this. She shook her head, not taking her eyes off Cole. You were about to die, Sheriff. I couldn't watch that happen. Not when this whole situation exists because of me. The vow, Grant insisted. You promised. I shot his gun, not him. I stopped violence without creating it. The vow holds, barely. It was a technicality and they both knew it. But Grant recognized what she was doing. She was trying to give him an out, a way to rationalize her actions so he would not have to arrest her. The thought was kind, but ultimately futile. She had picked up a weapon. That alone violated the spirit of their agreement, even if the letter remained technically intact. Cole laughed, a harsh sound like tearing canvas. You two are remarkable, standing here debating philosophy while my men have you surrounded. Do you think I came alone because I'm stupid? Do you think I don't have this entire street covered? As if to punctuate his point, more riders appeared at both ends of Main Street. 6 men on horseback, rifles drawn, creating a box around Grant, Claire, and Deputy Reed. The trap had been sprung. They were cornered. 19 guns, Grant observed, keeping his voice level despite the fear crawling up his spine. You've been busy recruiting Cole. When you have a righteous cause, men flock to it. Every one of these riders lost someone to violence. They understand justice delayed. They understand the need to balance scales. What they understand is the $100 you're paying them, Claire said flatly. Don't dress this up as crusade, Cole. It's revenge, plain and simple. Cole's expression hardened. My brother was all I had left after the war. Our parents dead. Our home burned. We survived on loyalty to each other, and you took him from me. Your brother took himself from you when he chose to murder innocent people. He was following orders. Captain Miller was the one. Your brother gave those orders? Claire interrupted, her voice cutting like a blade. I was there. I heard him laugh while my daughter bled out on our floor. He wasn't a soldier following commands. He was a monster who found an excuse to be monstrous. The words hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. Cole's face worked through emotions, rage and denial, and something that might have been grief battling for dominance. You're lying, he said, but the conviction had leaked from his voice. I'm not. And somewhere deep inside, you know I'm not. That's why you're here, not to avenge a hero, to avoid facing the truth about who he really was. Grant saw the moment Cole's control fractured. The colonel's hand dropped to his remaining pistol, the one holstered on his left hip. His draw was smooth practice, the motion of someone who had spent thousands of hours perfecting the muscle memory. But Claire was faster. She did not raise the rifle. Instead, she dropped it entirely, her hand blurring toward the pistol Grant had not realized she was carrying, concealed at the small of her back. The weapon appeared in her grip as if conjured, and she fired before Cole's gun had cleared leather. The shot was impossibly precise. The bullet struck Cole's left holster, destroying the retention strap and knocking the pistol free before he could draw it. Cole staggered back twice, disarmed, staring at Claire with something approaching awe mixed with his hatred. I could have killed you, Claire said softly. Both times. I chose not to. That's the difference between us, Cole. Between who I was and who I'm trying to be. Boss, Samuel Cross called from his horse. Give the word. We can end this right now. Cole raised a hand for Stahl and his men. He was breathing hard, the twin humiliations of being disarmed stinging his pride. But beneath the anger, Grant could see calculation. Cole was reassessing, realizing that direct confrontation with Black Orchid would end with him dead, vow or no vow. All right, Cole said slowly. You're fast, faster than the stories claimed. But speed doesn't matter when you're outnumbered 19-3. You can't shoot us all before we kill you and everyone in this town. No, Claire agreed, I can't. But I can make you the first to die, and the second, and the third. By the time your men cut me down, you'll be dead, and 2 of your closest friends with you. Is your revenge worth that price? Cole's jaw clenched. He was trapped between his need for vengeance and his survival instinct. Grant could see the war playing out behind his eyes. Deputy Reed chose that moment to speak, his voice carrying the weight of federal authority. Colonel Cole, I'm placing you under arrest for assault with a deadly weapon. Your man shot an unarmed civilian. That's attempted murder. You can come peacefully, or we can do this the hard way, but either way you're finished here. On whose authority? Cole demanded. United States Marshal Service. I've got warrants for half your men for crimes in 3 territories. You ride out now, I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth. You surrender, maybe we work out terms. Maybe you see daylight again before you're 70. It was a bluff. Reed had no such warrants, at least not on hand, but it was a good bluff delivered with conviction. Some of Cole's men shifted nervously in their saddles, clearly having secrets they would rather not examine by federal law. But Cole was not buying it. You're one martial old man. I've got 19 guns, says your warrants don't mean shit out here. 20, a new voice called. Everyone turned. Edith Walker stood on her saloon porch, a shotgun cradled in her arms. The weapon was old but well-maintained, and her finger rested easy on the trigger. 21, came another voice. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway of her boarding house holding a Winchester. Then more. The blacksmith, the general store owner, the pastor of the small church. One by one, the people of Redemption emerged from their hiding places armed and standing in support of their sheriff. Grant felt a swell of emotion he could not quite name. These were not gunfighters. They were shopkeepers and farmers' people who wanted nothing to do with violence. But they were standing anyway, choosing their town and their lawmen over safety. Cole looked around at the growing opposition, his confidence visibly shaken. What had seemed like a simple extraction was becoming a siege. If he pushed now, people would die. Lots of people, including most likely himself. This isn't over, Cole said, his voice tight. Not by a long shot. He whistled sharply and his men began to pull back, maintaining their weapons but creating distance. They retreated to the far end of Main Street, just out of easy rifle range, and stopped. Waiting, Grant allowed himself to breathe. The immediate crisis had passed, but the siege remained. Cole was not leaving. He was settling in, preparing for a longer game. Everyone inside, Grant ordered the townspeople. Shutter your windows. Stay away from sight lines. This isn't over yet. The civilians retreated reluctantly, leaving Grant, Reed, and Claire standing in the empty street. The sun had climbed higher, approaching noon, and the heat was building. Sweat ran down Grant's back, though he could not say whether it was from temperature or fear. That bought us time, Reed said. But not much. Cole will wait until dark, then make his move. We need to evacuate the town, Grant said. Get the women and children out at least. Load them on wagons and send them to Fort Halloran. The army can protect them. Fort Halloran is 40 miles, Claire pointed out. Cole's men would see the wagons leaving. They'd intercept. She was right, they were trapped. All of them. Grant's mind raced, trying to find an angle, a solution that did not end in massacre. His thoughts were interrupted by Billy Porter limping toward them from the direction of Doc Henderson's office. The boy's shoulder was bandaged, his arm in a sling, his face pale but determined. Uncle Thomas, Billy said. Doc says I'll live. Bullet went clean through. Hurts like hell, but I can still shoot left-handed if you need me. What I need is for you to get on a horse and ride to Fort Halloran. Bring help. I'm not running away while you fight my battle. This isn't your battle, boy. This is mine. And Claire's. You getting shot was my fault for not training you better, for not teaching you when to keep your hand away from your gun. Don't compound my failure by getting yourself killed trying to prove something. Billy's eyes glistened with tears, anger and shame and fear all mixing together. I wanted to be like you, fast and brave, and I'm not brave, Billy. I'm scared. Right now, I'm more scared than I've ever been in my life. My hands are shaking so bad, I don't know if I could hit the broadside of a barn. I'm old and slow and probably going to die today. There's nothing glorious about any of that. Then why are you still here? Grant smiled sadly. Because I made a promise to myself, to Elijah, to Claire, and a man's word is all he really has in the end. If I run, if I break that promise, then everything I've been for 43 years means nothing. Billy wiped at his eyes with his good hand. Then I'm staying too, because you're my family, and family doesn't run. Grant wanted to argue, wanted to order the boy away, but looking into Billy's face, he saw something he recognized. The same stubborn honor that had kept Grant wearing a badge long past the point of wisdom. You could not train that out of someone. You could only hope they survived long enough to learn from it. All right, Grant said quietly. You can stay, but you follow my orders exactly. No heroics, no quick draws. You do what I say when I say it, or, so help me, I'll arrest you myself. Clear. Clear. They moved to Grant's office, gathering behind the relative safety of thick adobe walls. Reed positioned himself at the window, watching Cole's forces through a gap in the shutters. Claire sat at Grant's desk field, stripping her pistol and checking each component with practiced efficiency. Grant watched her hands work, seeing the absolute confidence in every motion. This was second nature to her, as natural as breathing. She had been doing this since she was young, he realized. Training, preparing, becoming the weapon that would eventually exact her terrible vengeance. How old were you when you learned to shoot? He asked. Claire did not look up from her work. 12. My father taught me. He was a miner in California, worked claims up and down the Sierra Nevada, dangerous country. He said every person should know how to defend themselves, man or woman, Chinese or white. The gun doesn't care about any of that. It just cares whether you can use it. Were you always fast? No, I was terrible at first, slow and clumsy, but my father was patient. He taught me to break down every component of the draw, the grip, the clear, the presentation, the sight picture, the trigger press, each piece separate until each piece was perfect. Then you put them together and the speed comes natural. She reassembled the pistol with swift, economical movements and slid it back into her concealed holster. I practiced every day for 6 years. By the time I was 18, I could outdraw grown men twice my size. My father was proud, said I had a gift. Did he know what you'd use that gift for eventually? Claire's expression clouded. He died before San Sebastian. Accident in a mine collapse. He never knew about Daniel or Rose. Never knew what I became. She paused, her voice dropping. Maybe that's a mercy. He wouldn't have recognized the thing I turned into. Grant leaned against the wall, his back grateful for the support. You had cause for what you did. I'm not saying it was right, but I understand it. Understanding doesn't make it justice. I appointed myself judge, jury, and executioner. I hunted 12 men across 3 territories and killed them all. Some died quick. Others I made suffer. I told myself it was righteous, that I was balancing scales. But really I was just drowning in rage and looking for someone to pull down with me. And now I don't know what I am on. The old Claire died with her family. Black Orchid killed 12 men and then ran out of targets. What's left is something in between, something trying to figure out if redemption is even possible. Billy spoke up from where he sat, cleaning his own pistol one-handed. My mama used to say everyone deserves a second chance, that God's mercy is infinite if we're willing to accept it. Your mama was a good woman, Grant said. Better than me, certainly. She tried to keep me from being a lawman, said it would eat me alive. She was right. But you did good, Uncle Thomas. You've saved people, protected the innocent. That matters. Does it? I've also killed people. 17 men in 43 years, all legal, all justified, all haunting. Some nights I can't sleep because I hear them dying. Their last words, the way they sounded when they hit the ground. Your mama's mercy might be infinite, but my memory sure is. The conversation was cut short by Reed's urgent whisper. Movement. Cole sending someone forward. Unarmed, looks like. They crowded to the window, peering out. One of Cole's men, a younger rider, was walking his horse slowly up Main Street. He carried a white cloth tied to a stick, the universal signal for parley. The man stopped 50 feet from the office and called out, Sheriff Grant, Colonel Cole wants to talk, says he's got a proposition that might save lives. Grant considered. It was likely a trap, but refusing to talk would only guarantee bloodshed. He opened the office door and stepped out onto the porch, staying behind the cover of a support beam. I'm listening, he called back. The messenger gestured toward the far end of the street where Cole stood, visible among his men. Colonel says he'll meet you halfway, just you and him. No weapons, talk it out like civilized men. And if I refuse, then we wait until dark and burn every building in this town until the woman comes out. Colonel's done negotiating. This is the last offer. Grant felt Claire move up behind him. It's a trap, she said quietly. He'll kill you the moment you're in range. Maybe. But if there's even a chance to end this without more bloodshed, I have to take it. Then I'm coming with you. No, you stay here. If this goes bad, you're the only one fast enough to stop his men from massacring everyone. I need you here, promise me. Claire hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. I promise, but Sheriff, be careful. Cole's not the type to honor a truce, Varnish. Grant unstrapped his gun belt and handed it to Billy. Hold on to this for me, and if I'm not back in 10 minutes, you ride for Fort Halloran like your life depends on it, because it will. He walked out into the street feeling more naked than he had since childhood. Every step was an exercise in faith over fear. His hands trembled badly now, whether from age or terror he could not say. Probably both. Cole emerged from his own position similarly unarmed, walking with the ramrod posture of his military training. They met in the exact center of Main Street, surrounded by dust and tension, and the weight of history neither man had fully processed. Sheriff, Cole said with a nod. Colonel. They stood in silence for a moment, two old men who had tried to kill each other once and might yet finish the job. You know this is madness, Grant said finally. Whatever happens here today, people will die, probably us included. For what, a man who's been into the ground for 5 years? For principle, Cole replied. Your Black Orchid killed my brother outside the law. No trial, no due process, just execution. If we allow that to stand, we allow vigilante justice to replace law and order. Your brother was never going to face trial, and you know it. He would have run, disappeared, lived out his days free while his victims rotted. Claire did what the law wouldn't. Claire, Cole repeated, tasting the name. You've grown quite protective of your killer sheriff. Makes a man wonder if there's more to this than legal principle. Grant felt anger flare hot in his chest. Watch yourself, Cole. There's nothing improper about my actions. I saw a chance to reform someone, and I took it. Same chance Elijah Stone gave me 40 years ago. Ah, yes, the legendary Elijah Stone, the man who beat me in Silver Creek when you couldn't. Tell me, where is your noble mentor now? Why isn't he here to save you this time? He's dead, has been for 15 years, and he didn't save me in Silver Creek. He gave me a second chance to save myself. There's a difference. Cole smiled, but it held no warmth. And how many chances does your Chinese killer get? She's had 3 years. How long until you admit she can't be reformed, that some people are just born broken? Nobody's born broken. We're made that way by the world and by our choices. Claire chose vengeance once. She's choosing different now. That's worth protecting. Even if protecting her costs this entire town, even then. Because if we only protect people when it's convenient, we're not really protecting anyone. We're just picking favorites. Cole studied Grant for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he sighed, and for just a second, Grant saw past the cold facade to the grief beneath. My brother wrote to me every week during the war, Cole said quietly. Mama letters about his hopes and fears. He wanted to be a teacher after the fighting ended, work with children, build something instead of destroying it. Then somewhere between that dream and San Sebastian, something went wrong inside him. Or maybe he was always capable of both, good and evil. Same as all of us. Grant nodded slowly. This was the truth neither man wanted to face, that James Cole could have been a teacher and a murderer. That capacity for cruelty lived alongside capacity for kindness in every human heart. So where does that leave us? Grant asked. It leaves me with a choice. I can kill you, kill her, burn this town, and live with that weight for whatever time I have left. Or I can walk away, let go, admit that revenge won't bring James back or make sense of his death or heal anything at all. Hope flickered in Grant's chest. You could walk away, take your men, ride out, start over somewhere, live the life your brother wanted to live instead of dying for the one he chose. Cole looked away toward the mountains rising purple in the distance. It's not that simple. It never is. But simple and right aren't the same thing. If I walk away, my men will think I'm weak. They signed on for blood and justice. They'll want what they were promised. Then unpromise it. Tell them the truth, that you're done letting the past dictate the future. Some will follow, some won't. That's their choice to make. Cole turned back to Grant, and in his eyes was something that might have been the beginning of acceptance. For one fragile moment, Grant thought they might actually resolve this peacefully. Then a shot rang out. The bullet came from somewhere behind Cole's position, fired by one of his men. It tore through the air between the two leaders and struck the dirt at Grant's feet, kicking up dust. Cole spun fury, contorting his features. "Who fired? I gave no order." Samuel Cross rode forward, a rifle still smoking in his hands. His face was twisted with old hatred and fresh fear. "That's her Black Orchid. She's the one who killed them all at San Sebastian, left us in the street like bikinis. She doesn't deserve mercy, she deserves death." "I gave no order to fire, Sam. You're going soft, I can see it. You're going to let her walk, but I remember what she did, how fast she was, how she moved like a demon through the smoke and killed everyone I knew. She's a monster, and you're protecting her." The fragile peace shattered. Other men in Cole's group began shouting, some agreeing with Sam, some calling for restraint. The controlled situation devolved into chaos. Grant saw it happening and knew what came next. Sam Cross was operating on trauma and terror, not reason. He was going to shoot again this time, not at the ground. And when he did, everyone would start shooting. The massacre Grant had been trying to prevent would become inevitable. "Sam," Claire's voice cut through the noise like a blade. She had emerged from the office despite her promise, standing exposed on the porch. "You want to shoot someone? Shoot me, I'm right here." "Claire, get back inside," Grant shouted. But she ignored him, walking down into the street, hands away from her weapons, utterly calm in the face of 19 guns. "I remember you, Sam Cross," she continued, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. "You were the one who ran, the only one of Miller's crew who was smart enough to be afraid. You survived because you chose survival over pride. Don't waste that choice now." Sam's rifle wavered, tracking her movement. "You killed them all my friends. We were just following orders." "Following orders to murder children. That's not an excuse, Sam. That's cowardice dressed up as duty. We didn't know it would go that far. Miller said we were just going to scare them, make them leave peacefully. And when Miller started killing, you could have stopped him, could have walked away, could have done 100 different things. But you didn't. You stood there. You let it happen. And that makes you complicit." Sam's face crumpled, tears streaming down weathered cheeks. "I see them every night, the people we killed. Their faces. I can't make it stop." "I know," Claire said, and her voice was gentle now. "I see them too. The men I killed. I tell myself it was justice, but late at night when sleep won't come, I wonder if I'm any different than Miller. If revenge and murder are really the same thing wearing different masks." She stopped 20 feet from Sam, close enough that even a mediocre shot could hit her. "So here's what I'm offering you, Sam Cross. A choice. The same choice Sheriff Grant gave me 3 years ago. You can shoot me. Get your revenge. End the woman who's haunted your dreams. But that won't stop the nightmares. It'll just add one more face to the collection." "What's the other choice?" Sam asked, voice breaking. "You walk away. Right now. Get on your horse and ride. Don't look back. Find some quiet place and learn to live with what you've done. It won't be easy. Some days you'll wish you were dead. But maybe if you work at it long enough, you'll find something like peace. I haven't found it yet, but I'm trying. You could try too." The rifle dipped slightly. Sam was crying openly now, a broken man confronting demons he could not outrun. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it, for not stopping Miller, for shooting that boy today, for everything." "I know. I'm sorry too." Sam lowered his rifle completely. He looked at Cole, then at his fellow riders, then back to Claire. "I'm done. I can't do this anymore." He turned his horse and began riding away, slowly at first, then faster until he disappeared in a cloud of dust, heading west. One rider gone. 18 remained, but the damage was done. Sam's outburst had shattered the careful detente. Other men were muttering, hands drifting to weapons. The situation was degrading fast. Cole's face was thunderous. "Everyone stand down. I'm still in command here." "Are you Daesh?" one of the younger riders challenged. "Because it looks like you're letting her manipulate you, Strebe, on your emotions. Your brother is dead and you're making deals with his killer." "My brother is dead because he made evil choices. I've spent 5 years pretending otherwise, but I'm done lying to myself." "Then you're done leading us." The young rider drew his pistol, aiming not at Claire or Grant, but at Cole himself. This was mutiny, pure and simple. The gang was fracturing. Grant saw his chance. While attention was divided, while Cole's authority crumbled, he could act. He could A different shot rang out, this one from an unexpected direction. The young rider jerked in his saddle, his gun falling from nerveless fingers. He clutched at his arm where blood bloomed red through his shirt sleeve. A disabling wound, not fatal, but enough to take him out of the fight. Billy Porter stood on the roof of the general store, rifle in hand, smoke curling from the barrel. The boy had disobeyed orders, left the office, and positioned himself for exactly this kind of shot. His wounded shoulder had not impaired his aim with his offhand. "Nobody shoots the colonel," Billy shouted down, "and nobody shoots my uncle. This ends now or the next shot goes through someone's chest." It was a bluff. Billy probably could not make that shot, and even if he could, there were still 17 armed men who would cut him down in seconds. But the audacity of it, the sheer unexpected courage of a wounded boy taking a stand, shocked everyone into stillness. Grant used the pause. "Cole, call your men, end this before it becomes a bloodbath." Cole was staring at the wounded rider, at the fracturing unity of his gang, at the impossible situation spiraling beyond his control. Grant could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, the weighing of pride against pragmatism, of vengeance against survival. "Everyone hold," Cole commanded. "No more shooting, no more dying, not today." "But Colonel," another rider protested. "I said hold, that's an order." The riders settled, but the tension remained. This was not resolution. It was a momentary ceasefire while everyone caught their breath. Then Cole made his decision. He grabbed Edith Walker. The saloon owner had been watching from her porch, shotgun in hand, but not aimed at anyone. Cole moved with startling speed for a man his age, crossing the distance between Main Street and the saloon in a few long strides. He grabbed Edie from behind, one arm around her throat, the other producing a long hunting knife that he pressed to her jugular. "Nobody move," Cole shouted. "Nobody shoots or she dies." Grant's heart sank. The situation had just gone from bad to catastrophic. Edie was a civilian, an innocent. If Cole killed her, it would shatter any hope of peaceful resolution. "Cole, let her go," Grant said, trying to keep his voice calm. "This isn't solving anything. On the contrary, it's solving everything. Black Orchid, you have a choice. Surrender yourself to me. Come peacefully, or I cut this woman's throat and we burn your precious town to the ground." Claire had gone very still, her face unreadable. Grant could see her calculating, running through scenarios. She could draw and shoot, but not before Cole killed Edie. She could surrender, but that would mean her death and no guarantee Cole would honor his word about sparing the town. "You're better than this, Cole," Grant tried. "You're not a murderer of innocence. My brother was branded a murderer of innocence. What's the difference?" "The difference is you still have a choice. He made his. You can make different." Cole's grip tightened on Edie, the knife pressing hard enough to draw a thin line of blood. "My choice is made. Her life for Black Orchid's surrender. 10 seconds to decide." Grant looked at Claire, saw her hand moving slowly toward her weapon, saw the calculation in her eyes. She was going to try something. Something desperate and probably suicidal. "Claire, don't," he said. "I have to." "You don't. There's always another way." "Not this time." She moved, not toward her gun, but toward something else entirely. Her hand flashed out and grabbed a half-full whiskey bottle sitting on a nearby porch railing. In one fluid motion, she hurled it across the street where it shattered against the boots of one of Cole's mounted men. The horse spooked at the sudden noise and movement, rearing. Its rider fell crashing to the ground. The distraction lasted only a second, but Claire had already moved again. She snatched up a heavy brass spittoon and threw it at the oil lamp hanging from the saloon's overhang. Glass shattered. Burning oil splashed down. Fire bloomed. Chaos erupted. The mounted men's horses panicked at the flames. Riders struggled to control their mounts. Someone fired a shot, though at what target was unclear. The bullet went wild, punching through the false front of a building. In the confusion, Cole's grip on Edie loosened fractionally. It was enough. Claire's gun appeared in her hand and she fired. Not at Cole, but at the knife blade itself. The bullet struck steel with a screaming ricochet, the impact sending painful vibrations up Cole's arm and knocking the weapon from his grip. The knife clattered to the porch. Edie Freed scrambled away toward the safety of her saloon's interior. Grant moved too, drawing his own weapon, aiming at the nearest rider who seemed likely to shoot. "Federal officers, everyone drop your weapons." Reed emerged from the office, badge held high, rifle aimed. U.S. Marshal, lay down your arms or face federal charges. The situation hung on a knife's edge. Half the riders were fighting their panicked horses. Others had weapons drawn but seemed uncertain of their targets. Cole stood on the saloon porch unarmed, staring at Claire with something approaching awe mixed with his hatred. "You shot the knife out of my hand," he said, disbelieving. "That's impossible." "Nothing's impossible if you practice enough," Claire replied, "and I've had a lot of practice." Two more of Cole's men decided they had seen enough. They wheeled their horses and rode out, following Sam Cross into whatever future awaited deserters and cowards. 16 riders remained, but their unity was broken, their purpose shattered. Billy climbed down from his perch, rifle still trained on the group. Grant positioned himself beside Claire, forming a line with Reed and his nephew. 4 against 16, but 4 who held the moral and tactical high ground. "It's over, Cole," Grant said. "Your men are scattering. Your hostage is free. You've got nothing left but pride, and pride's a poor thing to die for." Cole stood alone on the porch, weaponless, defeated in every way that mattered. His face worked through emotions too complex for Grant to parse. Rage and grief and humiliation all mixed together into something that looked almost like acceptance. "What happens now?" Cole asked quietly. "Now you surrender. Face trial for assault, attempted murder, and a dozen other charges. Maybe the judge goes easy on you. Maybe not. But either way, this ends without more bloodshed. And her," Cole gestured toward Claire, "that's between her and federal law, not your concern anymore." Cole looked at his remaining men, saw the doubt in their faces, saw how quickly loyalty evaporated when things went wrong. He looked at the burning oil that was already being extinguished by townspeople with buckets of sand. He looked at Grant and Claire and the impossible situation that had somehow resolved without his brother's killer lying dead in the street. And he started laughing. It was not a pleasant sound. It was the laughter of a man whose last illusions had been stripped away, leaving only bitter truth. "5 years," he said between laughs. "5 years I spent planning this, gathering men, plotting revenge, building up this whole crusade in my mind. And for what? To lose to an old man with shaking hands and a woman who won't even kill me when she has cause. It's not losing, Cole. It's choosing to stop. Isn't that the same thing? No, losing means you had no choice. Stopping means you made one." The laughter faded. Cole descended the porch steps slowly, his hands visible and empty. He walked to where Grant stood and stopped, meeting the old lawman's eyes. "I want you to know something, Sheriff. Back in Silver Creek, when I beat you to the draw, I knew you were better than me. Knew you dedicated your life to the law, while I dedicated mine to killing. I won because I didn't care if I died. You did. That was my only advantage. What changed? Time, prison, long nights thinking about my brother and who he really was. I started caring again. About living, about legacy, about whether my life meant something beyond the men I'd killed." He paused. "You said everyone deserves a second chance. Does that include me?" Grant wanted to say no, wanted to tell Cole he had used up his chances and earned whatever judgment awaited him. But he thought of Elijah, thought of the mercy shown to an angry young man who had not deserved it, thought of the vow he had made to Claire and the principle it represented. "Yes," he said simply, "it includes you." Cole extended his hands, wrists together, ready for shackles. "Then I surrender. To you, to the law, to whatever comes next." Reed moved forward with iron restraints securing Cole's wrists while reading him his rights under territorial law. The remaining riders, seeing their leader in custody, began to disperse. Some rode off immediately, others dismounted, removing their gun belts in surrender. Within 10 minutes, what had been an army of vengeance was reduced to a handful of prisoners and a lot of abandoned horses. Billy approached Grant, his face pale with pain and shock. "Uncle Thomas, I'm sorry. I know you told me to stay put, but I thought—" "You thought right," Grant interrupted. "That shot saved lives, probably mine included. You did good, boy. But I disobeyed orders. Sometimes that's exactly what needs doing. Part of growing up is learning when to follow rules and when to break them for the right reasons. You're learning, that's what matters." Billy smiled weakly, then swayed. Grant caught him before he fell of the boy's wounded shoulder, finally catching up with his adrenaline. "Doc Henderson," Grant called, "I've got another patient for you." As Billy was carried off to medical attention, Grant turned to find Claire standing alone in the middle of the street. She had holstered her weapon and now stood with her arms wrapped around herself, looking smaller than he had ever seen her. He approached slowly. You kept your vow. Barely. Technically. But you kept it. Did I? I picked up a gun, Sheriff. I pointed it at living men. I pulled the trigger. The fact that I aimed for steel instead of flesh is just semantics. Semantics matter. Intent matters. You could have killed Cole 3 separate times today, and no jury would have convicted you. You chose not to. That's what counts. Claire looked at him, and for the first time since he had met her 3 years ago, she smiled. It was small and sad, and carried the weight of those 12 bodies from San Sebastian, but it was real. Thank you, she said quietly, for believing I could be better than I was, for not giving up on me when I'd given up on myself. That's what Elijah did for me. I'm just returning the favor to someone who needed it. They stood in companionable silence, watching redemption slowly return to normal. Townspeople emerged from hiding, checking on neighbors, extinguishing the last of the fire, beginning the process of recovery and repair. It would take time, but they would heal. Deputy Reed approached Cole, secured in the back of a covered wagon that would serve as temporary cell until they could transport him to proper facilities. Sheriff Grant, I need to speak with you and Miss Yang. Official business. They followed him to the office where Reed produced official-looking papers from his saddlebag. The U.S. Marshal Service has been watching this situation for 3 years. We know what you've been doing, protecting a wanted fugitive, and we've been letting it happen because Claire Yang has been a model citizen and because you're a respected lawman whose judgment we trust. But, Grant prompted, but now things have gone public. Cole's arrest will make newspapers. Questions will be asked. I need to make this official or my superiors will crucify me. He turned to Claire. Miss Yang, I'm placing you under arrest for 12 counts of murder in the New Mexico territory. You have the right to remain silent, the right to legal representation. Do you understand these rights? Claire nodded. I understand, and I don't dispute the charges. I killed those men. I won't pretend otherwise. However, Reed continued, I'm also recommending leniency to the territorial judge. You acted in response to the massacre of your family. The men you killed were wanted criminals who had evaded justice, and for 3 years you have demonstrated genuine reform. I can't promise what the judge will decide, but I'll speak on your behalf. Thank you, Deputy. Grant felt something twist in his chest. After everything, after keeping her safe for 3 years, he was going to lose her to the legal system anyway. It felt like failure, but Claire seemed calm, almost relieved. Sheriff, do you remember what you said when we first met about how you were giving me a chance to prove I'd changed? I remember. I've proved it. To you, to this town, to myself. Whatever happens next, I've had 3 years of peace I didn't deserve. That's more than I had any right to expect. If the price for that is prison or worse, then I'll pay it knowing I did something good at the end. She was right, but it did not make Grant feel any better. The sun had begun its descent toward evening when the town gathered for an impromptu meeting in front of the saloon. Everyone who had fought, who had stood with Grant against Cole's gang, who had risked everything for principle over safety. Edie spoke first, her hand bandaged, where Cole's knife had drawn blood. I propose we write a petition to the territorial governor, request a full pardon for Claire Yang based on her service to this community and the extenuating circumstances of her crimes. Seconded. Billy said, his arm still in its sling. Others voiced agreement. Mrs. Chen, the blacksmith, the pastor. One by one, the citizens of redemption stood for the woman who had helped save their town despite her dark past. Grant felt his eyes burn. This was what Elijah had believed in. Not the law as written, but justice as lived. People choosing mercy over vengeance, understanding over judgment. Reed watched the proceedings with interest. I can't make promises, but I'll carry that petition to the Capitol myself. Make sure the right people see it. As the meeting dissolved and people returned to their homes, Grant found himself alone with Claire one last time before she had to be transferred to federal custody. Whatever happens, he said, I want you to know you've made Elijah proud, and me. You've shown me that the work I've been doing for 43 years matters, that people can change, that second chances are worth giving. And you've shown me that mercy isn't weakness, that honor matters, that redemption is possible even for someone like me. They shook hands, a simple gesture that carried the weight of 3 years of trust and growth. "One more thing," Grant said. "If by some miracle you walk free from this, I want you to take my badge when I retire. Become the law and redemption. Show people that reformed outlaws make the best lawmen because they understand both sides." Claire's eyes widened. "Sheriff, I couldn't possibly think about it. That's all I ask." As night fell over Redemption, Grant sat on his office porch watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Billy had been treated and released, currently sleeping off laudanum in Grant's spare room. Cole was secured and guarded. Claire was in protective custody, awaiting transport. The immediate crisis had passed, but Grant could not shake the feeling that something larger was approaching, some consequence he had not foreseen. His premonition proved accurate. A rider approached from the east, moving fast, arriving in a cloud of dust as full dark settled. The man dismounted in front of Grant's office and handed over a telegram. Grant read it by lamplight, his blood running cold. "Urgent stop. Prisoner Jackson Cole, previously held territorial prison, stop, released 3 months prior. On forged documents, stop real early. Release paperwork discovered to be fraudulent, stop. Cole escaped custody using bribed guards. Stop investigation reveals larger conspiracy, stop. Additional fugitive known as Red Phoenix believed. En route your location. Stop, exercise extreme caution. Stop, Marshall Davidson." Grant read the message 3 times, each reading making his stomach sink lower. The pieces fell into place with horrible clarity. Cole's escape had not been legitimate. Someone had helped him. Someone with resources and connections. Someone who wanted him free for a specific purpose. The Red Phoenix. Another legend. Another ghost from the blood-soaked territories. A killer as efficient and merciless as Black Orchid had been, but still active, still hunting, and heading for redemption. Grant stood, his tired body protesting, and walked to where Claire was being held in a secured room at the hotel. Reed stood guard outside. "We have a problem," Grant said, showing them both the telegram. Reed's face went pale. "Red Phoenix. Christ, I've heard stories. They say she's killed 20 men in 2 years. Never been caught, never been identified. Some think she's a myth." "She's real," Claire said quietly from inside her room, "and I know who she is." Both men turned to stare at her. "Her real name is Rose Chen," Claire continued, her voice hollow. "She's my daughter." The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot, impossible and yet undeniable. Grant stared at Claire through the hotel room doorway, his mind struggling to process what she had just said. "Your daughter," he repeated slowly. "Rose, the one who died at San Sebastian." "The one I thought died," Claire corrected, her voice tight with emotion held barely in check. "I saw her shot, saw her fall. There was so much blood. I held her and she wasn't breathing, and I was certain." She stopped, pressing a hand to her mouth. When she continued, her voice was steadier, but carried an undertone of anguish that cut Grant to his core. "After I buried Daniel, after the shock wore off enough for me to function, I went back for Rose. But her body was gone. I assumed scavengers had taken it or someone had moved her. I searched for 2 days before the rage took over, and I stopped looking for my daughter and started hunting the men who killed my family." "And you never checked," Grant said quietly. "Never verified." "How could I? I was half mad with grief. Everyone I asked said they hadn't seen a child's body. I thought that confirmed she'd been taken. I thought it meant I'd lost even the chance to bury her properly." Claire's hands gripped the bars of her window. "I never imagined she might be alive. Never let myself hope, because hope would have destroyed me." Reed pulled a second telegram from his pocket, this one more detailed, sent separately from the first. "According to Marshall Davidson's investigation, a Chinese girl matching Rose Chen's description was found by a missionary family the day after the San Sebastian massacre. Gunshot wound to the left shoulder, severe trauma. She'd crawled nearly a quarter mile before collapsing." "Where did they take her?" Claire asked. "San Francisco, an orphanage run by a Presbyterian mission. Records show she stayed there for 3 years, then disappeared at age 12. No one knows where she went after that." "I know," Claire said hollowly. "She went looking for me, and when she couldn't find me, she became what I was, a killer." Grant pulled a chair close to the doorway and sat heavily, his knees grateful for the relief. "How do you know that's what happened?" "Because it's what I would have done, what I did do. When you lose everything and no one comes to save you, you save yourself. You become hard. You become dangerous. You become the thing that hurt you so nothing can hurt you again. The reports say Red Phoenix first appeared 5 years ago, Reed said, consulting his papers. A series of executions across Colorado and New Mexico. All the victims were men with records, murderers, rapists, the kind of people the law couldn't or wouldn't touch. Clean kills, professional, and always with a calling card. Let me guess, Claire said. A red flower, a phoenix orchid. Reed nodded. How did you know him? Because I left black orchids. She's mirroring me, becoming what I was, finishing what I started. The implications settled over them like a burial shroud. Rose Chen, the Red Phoenix, was coming to redemption. She had helped orchestrate Cole's escape, had pointed him at this town like a weapon, all to draw out her mother, to force a confrontation that had been building for 15 years. Why now? Grant asked. Why wait all this time? Because she only recently found out I was alive, Claire said. I vanished 3 years ago when I made my vow to you. Stopped killing, stopped being Black Orchid. The legend went quiet. Most people assumed I'd died. But Rose kept looking, and somehow she tracked me here. Billy appeared in the hallway, his good arm supporting his wounded one. The boy had been roused by the commotion and now stood listening, his young face grave. So what do we do? He asked. How do we stop her? We don't, Claire said firmly. This is my problem, my daughter, my failure. I'll face her alone. Like hell you will, Grant said. You're in federal custody. You're not facing anyone until a judge decides your fate. Sheriff, if Rose gets here and I'm locked up, she'll tear this town apart looking for me. She won't care about collateral damage. She'll hurt anyone she has to. I can't let that happen. Reed stood pacing the small hallway. We could evacuate. Get everyone out before she arrives. And go where? Grant countered. We don't know when she's coming or from which direction. She could already be here watching, waiting. We evacuate and she picks off stragglers. Then we fortify, turn this town into a stronghold. Against one woman, a woman who's reportedly as fast as Black Orchid, in her prime, we'd need an army. Billy spoke up, his voice thoughtful. What if we don't fight her at all? What if we talk to her? Miss Claire, she's your daughter. Surely there's some part of her that still remembers you, still loves you. The girl who loved me died the same night her father did, Claire said. What's coming isn't my daughter. It's the ghost of my worst mistakes given form and purpose. Grant stood his back, protesting the movement. He walked to the window, looking out at Redemption's quiet streets. Good people lived here. Families, children. They had already weathered one storm today. They did not deserve another. But they would get one anyway because the past never stayed buried and sins always found their way home. We prepare, he said finally. We assume Rose is already here or will be soon. We post guards, we watch for strangers. And when she reveals herself, we try talking first and shooting only if we have no choice. And if talking doesn't work, Reed asked. Grant met Claire's eyes. Then we do what lawmen have always done. We stand between the innocent and the violent, and we hope we're fast enough to make a difference. They worked through the night, transforming Redemption from a sleepy frontier town into something resembling a military encampment. Reed deputized every able-bodied man who could shoot straight. They established watch rotations, set up barricades at key intersections, and cleared sight lines along Main Street. Grant worked alongside them, despite his exhaustion, driven by the knowledge that he had perhaps one last fight left in him. His hands trembled worse than ever, but he forced them steady through sheer will. Billy stayed at his side, learning, observing, becoming the lawman his uncle was trying to teach him to be. As dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Edie appeared with coffee and bread for the men on watch. She found Grant sitting on a barrel outside his office, cleaning his Colt for the third time that night. You look like death warmed over, she observed, handing him coffee. Feel like it too. He accepted the cup gratefully, wrapping his cold hands around its warmth. How are the civilians? Scared but holding together. Mrs. Chen organized the women into an aid station in case there's wounded. Pastor Allen is leading prayer services for anyone who wants them. We're doing what frontier folk do, enduring. You should leave, Edie. Take a wagon and head for Fort Halloran. This isn't your fight. She smiled sadly. We've known each other 40 years, Tom. In all that time, have you ever known me to run from trouble? There's running and there's survival. No shame in the latter. Maybe not, but there'd be shame in abandoning you when you need friends. She sat beside him, their shoulders touching companionably. You think she's really coming, this Red Phoenix? She's coming. Question is when and how. And you think she's really Claire's daughter? Think Claire believes it. That's enough. They sat in silence, watching the town wake to another day of tension and fear. The normalcy of sunrise felt obscene given what was coming. Somewhere out there, a broken woman driven by rage and grief was planning violence. And Grant, old and tired and shaking, was expected to stop her. The irony was not lost on him. He had spent 3 years trying to reform one killer, only to face her daughter, who had become exactly what her mother used to be. It was like watching history repeat itself in some cruel cosmic joke. What would Elijah do? Edie asked quietly. Grant considered. He'd find a way to make her listen, make her see past the anger to what she's really feeling. Elijah had a gift for that, seeing through to the heart of a person. And you learned from the best. I learned the techniques, but I never had his wisdom, his patience. He could talk a rabid dog into being petted. I just muddle through and hope for the best. You saved Claire. Did I? Or did I just delay her reckoning? Before Edie could answer, a shout went up from the north end of town. One of the posted guards was calling out, pointing toward the ridge where Cole's riders had first appeared. A lone figure sat on horseback, silhouetted against the rising sun. Grant stood, his heart beginning its familiar pre-fight hammering. Here we go. The rider descended slowly, making no threatening moves. As she drew closer, Grant could make out details. Young, perhaps 28 or 30, Chinese features that echoed Claire's bone structure. Dark hair pulled back severely. She wore black like her mother, but where Claire's clothing was simple and functional, this woman's garments were tailored, expensive, chosen for effect as much as utility. She stopped 50 yards from the town's edge and dismounted. Her hands stayed visible and away from the 2 pistols riding on her hips. She walked forward alone, her stride confident, until she stood at the beginning of Main Street. I'm looking for Sheriff Thomas Grant, she called out, her voice carrying clearly in the morning quiet. Grant stepped forward, Billy and Reed flanking him. I'm Grant. The woman smiled, but it held no warmth. I've heard stories about you, Sheriff. The lawman who gave Black Orchid sanctuary, who protected a mass murderer because you believed in redemption. She paused. I'm here to test that belief. You're Rose Chen. I was Rose Chen a lifetime ago. Now I'm just someone who wants answers. Then let's talk. Just you and me. No guns, no violence, just conversation. Rose laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You think talking will solve this? You think words can heal 15 years of abandonment? I think it's worth trying before anyone else gets hurt. Hurt, Sheriff, no one here is going to get hurt, except maybe you if you try to stop me from seeing my mother. Grant kept his voice level, reasonable. Your mother is in federal custody. She's cooperating with the law. She'll stand trial for what she did. What she did? You mean murdering 12 men, avenging her family. Rose's voice rose in anger, bleeding through her control. Those men deserved worse than they got. They killed innocents. They laughed while doing it. My mother was the only justice they ever faced. And what about the justice you've been dispensing? The reports say you've killed 20 men in 5 years. How many of them deserved it? How many were just convenient targets for your rage? Rose's hand drifted toward her pistol, then stopped. Every man I killed had earned his death 10 times over. Murderers, rapists, men the law couldn't touch because they had money or connections or luck. I gave their victims what the courts wouldn't: closure. You gave them vengeance dressed up as justice. Same as your mother did. And it didn't make anything better, did it? Didn't bring your father back. Didn't heal the wound. Nothing can heal this wound. Rose's composure cracked, revealing the anguish beneath. I was 7 years old. I watched my father die. I was shot and left for dead. I crawled through blood and dirt until I passed out. And when I woke up, I was in an orphanage full of strangers who pitied me. Her voice broke. I waited for her. Every day for 3 years, I waited for my mother to come find me, to rescue me, to tell me everything would be okay. But she never came. And eventually I understood. She hadn't survived, or worse, she'd survived and didn't want me anymore. Grant felt his heart constrict. This was the core of it. Not anger at the men who had destroyed her family. Anger at the woman who had abandoned her, even if that abandonment was unintentional. She didn't know you were alive, Grant said gently. She thought you died. She grieved for you. The grief drove her to become Black Orchid. Grief, Rose spat the word. She turned her grief into a killing spree that made her famous. A legend, the Black Orchid. Everyone knew that name, everyone feared it. And I'm supposed to believe that in 5 years of being this legendary killer, she never once thought to check whether her daughter might have survived. She looked for you, right after the massacre. When she couldn't find your body, she assumed it had been taken by scavengers. She assumed, and then moved on to revenge. Well, I have news for you, Sheriff. I didn't move on. I couldn't. Every day, for 15 years, I've lived with the knowledge that my mother cared more about killing strangers than finding her child. Billy spoke up, his young voice carrying conviction. That's not fair. You don't know what she was going through. Grief makes people do irrational things. Rose turned her cold gaze on the boy. And who are you to lecture me on grief? Someone who just lost his mother, someone who understands pain, but I'm not out killing people because of it. Give it time. Let that pain ferment for 15 years. Let it turn toxic and eat you from the inside. Then tell me what you do. Grant raised a hand forestalling Billy's retort. Rose, I understand your anger. I do. But taking it out on your mother won't heal you. It'll just create more pain. I'm not here to heal, Sheriff. I'm here for answers. I'm here to look my mother in the eye and ask her why. Why she gave up on me. Why revenge mattered more than her own child. And depending on her answer, Rose's hand settled on her pistol grip. Well, we'll see. You're not seeing her while you're armed and angry. Then I guess we have a problem. The standoff stretched taut. Rose's hand on her gun, Grant's hand hovering near his own weapon. Reed and Billy ready to draw. The morning sun climbing higher, illuminating the coming violence with cruel clarity. Then Claire's voice cut through the tension. Rose. Everyone turned. Claire stood in the street behind Grant, having somehow slipped her guard at the hotel. She wore no weapons, her hands visible and empty. Her face was a mask of careful control, but her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Mama, Rose breathed the word, half prayer, half curse. They stared at each other across 30 yards of dusty street, mother and daughter reunited after 15 years of pain and misunderstanding. The resemblance was striking now that Grant could see them together. The same bone structure, the same way of standing, the same capacity for stillness that suggested coiled violence. Claire walked forward slowly, ignoring Grant's whispered warning. She stopped 15 feet from Rose, close enough to see her daughter's face, clearly far enough to avoid seeming threatening. You're alive, Claire said, wonder and grief and joy all mixed together in those two words. My baby girl is alive. Don't call me that, Rose said, but her voice lacked conviction. I'm not your baby girl. That child died the same night you abandoned her. I didn't abandon you. I thought you were dead. I held you, and you weren't breathing, and there was so much blood. But I wasn't dead. I survived, and you never checked, never came back. I looked for you for 2 days. I searched. No one had seen you. Your body was gone, and I thought... Claire's voice broke. I thought I'd lost everything. My husband, my daughter, my entire world. The grief nearly killed me. So I channeled it into rage, into hunting the men responsible. It was the only thing that kept me alive. Rose's composure was fracturing, tears streaming down her face, even as her hand remained on her weapon. You should have kept looking. Should have made sure a good mother would have moved heaven and earth. You're right, I should have. I failed you in the worst possible way, and I've carried that failure every day since. Even when I thought you were dead, I felt like I'd let you down, like I should have saved you somehow. Pretty words, but they don't change anything. Claire took another step closer. No, they don't. Nothing I say can give you back the 15 years you lost. Can't undo the pain or the loneliness or the nights you cried yourself to sleep wondering why your mama didn't come. I know that. But Rose, I'm here now. I'm standing right in front of you. and I'm begging you to give me a chance to make it right. How, how do you make this right? I don't know, maybe I can't. Maybe some things are too broken to fix, but I want to try. I want to know you, want to hear about your life, your struggles, everything I missed. Want to be whatever you need me to be, even if that's just someone to yell at while you work through this anger. Rose laughed bitterly. You think I need therapy? You think talking about my feelings will heal the wound? No, I think you need your mother, and I need my daughter. That's the truth beneath all the anger and pain and violence. We need each other. I don't need anyone. Yes, you do, just like I do. That's what makes us human instead of monsters. The need for connection, for love, for someone who understands us even at our worst. Rose's gun hand was shaking now, torn between violence and vulnerability. You left me. You chose revenge over me. I did, and I'm sorry. Sorrier than I've ever been about anything. If I could go back and make different choices, I would in a heartbeat. But I can't. All I can do is stand here now and tell you that I love you, that I never stopped loving you, that losing you destroyed me in ways I'm still trying to heal from. The street was silent except for Rose's ragged breathing and Claire's quiet words. Grant stood frozen, afraid that any movement might shatter the fragile moment. I became you, Rose said quietly. I tracked down everyone who escaped your justice, found the men who got away, killed them the same way you would have. I thought it would make me feel closer to you somehow, like we were connected across the distance. And did it? No, it just made me feel empty, hollow, like I was play acting at being someone I didn't understand. Claire nodded slowly. That's what revenge does. It promises satisfaction, but delivers only emptiness. I learned that lesson too late. Spent 5 years killing, and the whole time I was dying inside. Then why did you stop? If you knew it was wrong, why did it take you so long? Because I didn't know how to stop. Because the killing was the only thing that made sense when everything else was chaos. Because I was scared that if I stopped being Black Orchid, I'd have to face what I'd become. A murderer, a monster, a woman who had lost her way so completely she couldn't find the path back. What changed? Claire gestured at Grant. Him. Sheriff Grant found me at my lowest point and offered something I thought I'd lost forever. A second chance. He made me promise to stop killing, to try living peacefully, to prove I could be more than my worst actions. Rose looked at Grant, her expression calculating. And you believed her just like that? No, Grant said. I took a gamble, based on faith more than evidence. But she's kept her promise for 3 years. Hasn't hurt anyone. Hasn't picked up a gun except to defend herself. That's worth something. Well, fun as it does 3 years of good behavior erase 12 murders? No, but it suggests the capacity for change, for growth. Your mother isn't the same person who became Black Orchid. She's someone trying to build a different life from the ashes of the old one. Rose turned back to her mother. And what about me? Do I get a second chance too? Or am I too far gone? You're not too far gone, Claire said firmly. You're hurt and angry and lost. But you're still my daughter, still the little girl I used to sing to sleep, still the child who laughed at butterflies and cried over wounded birds. That person is still in there under all the pain. You don't know me anymore. Then let me. Let me learn who you've become. Show me the woman my daughter grew into. Rose's gun came out of its holster in one smooth motion, aimed at Claire's chest. Her hand was steady, her eyes hard. Or what? She demanded. You'll talk me to death, hug away the anger. You abandoned me once. What's to stop you from doing it again? Claire stood her ground, not flinching from the weapon pointed at her heart. Nothing. You're right. I could fail you again. Could make promises I can't keep. Could prove myself unworthy of being your mother. But Rose, isn't the possibility of having a family again worth the risk? A family? We're not a family. We're strangers who share blood. Then let's become more than strangers. It won't be easy. Might be impossible. But don't we owe it to your father to try to honor his memory by not letting hate destroy what's left of his family? The invocation of Daniel Chen's name hit Rose like a physical blow. Her gun hand wavered, the barrel dipping slightly. Don't you dare, she whispered. Don't you use him against me. I'm not using him. I'm remembering him. Remembering how he believed in second chance and redemption and the fundamental goodness of people. He would want us to forgive each other, to heal, to move forward instead of staying trapped in the past. He's dead because of you, because you married him, because your presence in his life made him a target. Yes, my choices led to his death, to yours or what I thought was your death. I carry that guilt every moment. But destroying ourselves won't bring him back. Living well, living with honor and compassion, that's how we honor his memory. Rose's gun lowered completely, hanging loose at her side. She stood there, shoulders shaking, tears flowing freely now. I don't know how, she said brokenly. I don't know how to stop being angry. It's all I've had for so long. Claire closed the distance between them, moving slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. Then let me teach you the way Sheriff Grant taught me. One day at a time, one choice at a time. Choosing healing over hurting. Choosing connection over isolation. She stood directly in front of Rose, now close enough to touch. Slowly giving her daughter every chance to pull away, Claire raised her hands and cupped Rose's face. You're so beautiful, she whispered. You look like your father. Same eyes, same determined chin. I've missed you so much. Rose made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. I've hated you for so long. Dreamed about this moment. About making you suffer the way I suffered. But now that it's here, I just feel tired. Then rest, let go. Stop fighting for just a moment and let yourself be my daughter again. Rose's gun fell from her hand, hitting the dirt with a muffled thump. Her arms came up, wrapping around Claire, and she collapsed against her mother's shoulder, sobbing like the child she had been when her world ended. Claire held her one hand cradling Rose's head, the other rubbing circles on her back, murmuring the same comfort words she must have used 15 years ago. Mother and daughter broken and trying to mend, standing in the middle of a dusty street while an entire town held its breath. Grant felt his own eyes burn. This was grace. This was redemption made manifest. Two people who had every reason to destroy each other, instead choosing to heal. Billy whispered, "Is it over?" "Maybe," Grant replied. "Or maybe it's just beginning." The reunion lasted several long minutes before Claire gently pulled back, wiping tears from Rose's face with her thumbs. "Come with me," she said. "Let me introduce you to the people who've been keeping me sane. Let's sit and talk and start figuring out how to be a family again." Rose nodded mutely, allowing herself to be led toward Edie's saloon. The townspeople parted to let them pass, faces reflecting relief and wonder in equal measure. Grant started to follow, but Deputy Reed caught his arm. "Sheriff, we still have a problem. Rose Chen is wanted for multiple murders across 3 territories. I can't just let her walk away." Grant had known this was coming, had hoped the moment of reconciliation might somehow resolve everything, even though logic said otherwise. "I know, but give them a few hours at least. Let them have this reunion before we tear it apart with legal reality." Reed shook his head. "I can give them until tomorrow morning. After that, I have to do my job. Both of them will have to face trial." "Understood. Thank you for the grace period." As Reed walked away to organize his men, Billy approached his uncle. "What happens now? After tomorrow?" "I don't know, boy. Best case, a judge shows mercy, recognizes the circumstances, maybe assigns some form of supervised release or community service instead of prison time. In worst case, they hang, both of them, mother and daughter side by side." Billy paled. "That's not right. They deserve better." "Deserving's got nothing to do with it. The law doesn't care about deserving, it cares about justice. And justice is blind to circumstances sometimes." They stood watching the saloon where Claire and Rose had disappeared. Inside, through the windows, Grant could see them sitting together, talking, occasionally reaching out to touch each other, as if confirming the other was real. "Uncle Thomas," Billy said quietly, "if they do hang, will you be the one to do it as sheriff?" The question hit Grant like a fist. He had not let himself think that far ahead, had not considered that his duty might require him to execute the woman he had tried so hard to save. "I don't know," he admitted. "I honestly don't know if I could do that." "Then retire, right now, today. Hand over the badge and walk away before you have to make that choice." It was tempting. God, it was tempting to simply remove himself from the equation, to let someone else carry the burden. But that was cowardice dressed up as wisdom, and Grant had never been one to run from hard choices. Can't do that, Billy. I made promises, gave my word. I have to see this through, whatever that means. They spent the rest of the day in a strange limbo. Cole remained in custody, sedated and quiet. His remaining men had been processed and transported to Fort Halloran for trial. The town slowly returned to normal, though everyone kept glancing toward the saloon where the reunion continued. As evening approached, Grant found himself on his office porch once more, watching the sun descend. Edie joined him carrying 2 glasses of whiskey. "They're still talking," she reported, "making up for 15 lost years in a single afternoon. It's beautiful and heartbreaking in equal measure. And tomorrow they face the consequences. But tonight they have each other. That's something." Grant accepted the whiskey, savoring its burn. "I've been wearing this badge for 43 years, seen a lot of death, a lot of pain, but I've never felt so useless as I do right now. 2 women in there trying to rebuild a relationship the law will tear apart before it even has a chance to solidify. Maybe the law's wrong sometimes. Maybe, but it's all we have. Without it, we're just animals with guns. The law might be imperfect, but it's the framework we've agreed on for living together. I can't just ignore it when it becomes inconvenient. Elijah would find a way. Elijah's dead, and I'm not him. I'm just an old man who's made too many mistakes and is running out of time to fix them." They sat in silence until full dark fell. Then Edie stood, laying a hand on Grant's shoulder. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you did right by Claire. By Rose, too, in your own way. You gave them a chance. That's all anyone can ask." After she left, Grant remained on the porch thinking about choices and consequences, and the weight of a badge grown too heavy for old shoulders. Tomorrow would bring reckonings, trials, judgments. But tonight, for a few precious hours, 2 broken people were trying to heal. And that was worth protecting, even if he did not know how. Morning came too soon, bringing with it Deputy Reed in a wagon to transport the prisoners. Grant met him in the street, his own exhaustion evident in the dark circles under his eyes. "We need to move them today," Reed said without preamble. "The longer we wait, the harder this gets." "I know. Give me an hour with them first. Let me prepare them." Reed nodded reluctantly. 1 hour. Then we do this by the book." Grant found Claire and Rose in the saloon, sitting close together at a corner table. They looked up as he entered, and he saw in their faces the knowledge that this moment had been coming. "It's time," he said gently. Claire stood squeezing Rose's hand before releasing it. "We knew it would be. We've been discussing what comes next. And Brookham, we're turning ourselves in voluntarily. No fight, no resistance. We'll face trial and accept whatever judgment comes." Rose stood as well, and her face calmer than Grant had seen it. "I'm done running, done hiding. If my mother can face her crimes with dignity, so can I." Grant felt a swell of pride mixed with sadness. "The trials won't be easy. The crimes are serious. I'll speak on your behalf for what that's worth, but the ultimate decision rests with judges and juries." "We understand," Claire said. "But Sheriff, before we go, I need you to know something. These 3 years you gave me, they were the most peaceful of my adult life. You showed me that change was possible. That redemption wasn't just a word, but an achievable goal. Whatever happens next, I'm grateful." "And I need to thank you too," Rose added, "for not shooting me yesterday, for giving my mother and me a chance to reconnect. That gift is worth more than freedom." Grant's throat tightened. "You remind me why I became a lawman in the first place. Not to punish, but to protect. Not to judge, but to serve. You've taught this old man that he still has things to learn." They walked together to where Reed waited with the transport wagon. The townspeople had gathered, creating a corridor of witnesses. As Claire and Rose climbed into the wagon, prepared for the journey to territorial court, the crowd began to applaud. It started with Mrs. Chen clapping slowly but firmly. Then Edie joined in. Then the blacksmith. Then others, until the entire street echoed with the sound of appreciation and support. Claire looked stunned. Rose wept openly. These people knew what they were, what they had done, and were still offering respect and hope. Grant climbed onto his horse, intending to escort the wagon personally. Billy, recovered enough to ride, joined him. Together they would see this through to whatever end awaited. As the wagon rolled out of redemption, heading toward an uncertain future, Grant allowed himself one backward glance at the town he had protected for 5 years. It looked the same as always. Dusty, weathered, ordinary, but it was also extraordinary. A place where broken people could find shelter, where second chances were offered freely, where the possibility of redemption lived alongside the certainty of consequence. The journey to the territorial capital took 3 days. During that time, Grant watched Claire and Rose together, saw them building the relationship that should have existed for 15 years. They talked about Daniel, about memories, about the hole his death had left. They talked about survival strategies and coping mechanisms and the ways trauma shapes a person. And slowly Grant saw Rose transform. The hard edges softened. The anger diminished. She was still fierce, still dangerous, but now that danger was tempered by understanding and connection. On the third evening, as they camped under stars that cared nothing for human drama, Rose approached Grant at the fire. "Sheriff, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you really save my mother? Was it truly about Elijah Stone and second chances? Or was there something else?" Grant considered the question, wanting to give her honesty. "Both, I think. Elijah's memory was part of it. But also I saw in your mother something I recognized. A person who had become their worst moment and didn't know how to be anything else. I've been that person. Most lawmen have if they're honest. We see darkness and sometimes we become it. What separates us is whether we find our way back." "And you think she found her way back?" "I think she's trying, same as you're trying now. That's all redemption is. The constant effort to be better than you were." Rose nodded slowly. "If I go to prison, will you watch over her? Make sure she doesn't fall back into old patterns?" "If I'm still around to do it, yes. But Rose, you might not go to prison. Neither might she. The judge could show mercy." "I don't want mercy I haven't earned. I want justice. Real justice, not the kind I dispense with a gun." "That's a mature view. I'm trying to be worthy of my mother's faith, of your example, of my father's memory." They sat in companionable silence, watching flames dance against the night. Tomorrow they would reach the capital. Tomorrow the trials would begin. But tonight there was peace. The territorial courthouse was an imposing building of red brick and white columns designed to intimidate and inspire respect in equal measure. Judge Patricia Hawthorne presided, a woman of 60 with iron gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. The trials were consolidated, both women facing their charges simultaneously. The prosecution laid out the facts with clinical precision. 12 murders for Claire, 20 for Rose. The evidence was overwhelming, the crimes undeniable. But the defense, provided by a young lawyer named Samuel Bradford, who took the case pro bono, argued context. He presented evidence of the San Sebastian massacre, testimony from survivors who described the horror of that night, documentation of Captain Miller's criminal history and the atrocities his gang had committed. For Rose's crimes, Bradford provided victim impact statements from the families of those she had killed. But these statements were surprising. Many expressed gratitude. One widow testified that Rose had killed the man who murdered her husband, a crime the law had failed to prosecute due to lack of evidence. Another mother thanked Rose for ending the monster who had assaulted her daughter. It was uncomfortable testimony. It forced the court to grapple with the question of whether unofficial justice was still justice when the official system failed. Grant took the stand on the third day of trial. He was sworn in, his right hand still trembling as it rested on the Bible. "Sheriff Grant," the prosecutor began, "you've had 3 years to observe Claire Yang. In your professional opinion, does she represent a continued threat to public safety?" "No, sir. She's kept her vow, lived peacefully, contributed to the community. If anything, she's been a stabilizing presence in redemption. And yet she murdered 12 men. She executed 12 criminals who had escaped justice through corruption or incompetence. I'm not saying it was legal, but I'm saying it was understandable. The law doesn't recognize understandable as a defense, Sheriff." "No, sir, but the law should recognize growth, change, the capacity for people to become better than their worst actions. Claire Yang isn't the same person who became Black Orchid. She's someone who's fought hard to be different. That deserves consideration." The prosecutor moved to Rose's case. "And Rose Chen, you barely know her. How can you vouch for her character?" "I can vouch for her capacity for change. I watched her confront her mother with a gun and choose conversation over violence. Watched her break down walls of anger to find the hurt child underneath. That's not the action of an irredeemable killer. But she has killed. 20 men. That's not the action of someone seeking redemption. It's the action of someone who didn't know redemption was possible, who thought vengeance was the only path available. But now she knows different. Now she has her mother back, has seen a different way. Give her the chance to prove she can walk that path. The prosecutor dismissed him, but Bradford called Grant back for defense questions. Sheriff, you're 68 years old. You've served the law for over 4 decades. In all that time, have you ever broken the law for what you believed was a greater good? Grant hesitated. The question was dangerous, but he had promised honesty. Yes. Can you give an example? In 1879, I helped a escaped slave reach Canada. Slavery was still legal in some territories at the time. I broke the law because the law was wrong. And do you regret that decision? No, sir, I don't. So you believe there are times when individual conscience supersedes legal mandate? I believe the law serves justice, not the other way around. When the law fails justice, good people have an obligation to make it right, not through murder or violence when other options exist, but through action of some kind. Bradford nodded, satisfied. No further questions. The trials lasted 2 weeks. Both women testified, acknowledging their crimes without excuse or justification. They presented themselves as they were broken people who had made terrible choices and were now trying to live with the consequences. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, the courtroom was packed. Grant sat in the front row, Billy beside him. Edie had made the journey from redemption along with Mrs. Chen and a dozen other townspeople who wanted to show support. Judge Hawthorne called for order as the jury foreman stood. In the case of the Territory versus Claire Yang on 12 counts of murder in the second degree, how do you find? Guilty on all counts, Your Honor. Claire's expression didn't change. She had expected nothing else. In the case of the Territory versus Rose Chen on 20 counts of murder in the second degree, how do you find? Guilty on all counts, Your Honor. Rose reached out, finding her mother's hand. They gripped each other tightly. Judge Hawthorne addressed the courtroom. The jury has spoken. However, sentencing is at my discretion. I have reviewed the evidence, read the testimony, considered the circumstances and the character witnesses. This court will recess for 1 day while I make my determination. Bailiff returned the defendants to custody. That night, Grant could not sleep. He paced his hotel room, turning over possibilities. The judge could sentence them to hang, could give them life in prison, could show unexpected mercy and assign probation. There was no way to know. Billy found him in the hotel bar at midnight, staring into a whiskey he had not touched. Can't sleep either, the boy asked. Haven't slept properly in weeks. What do you think will happen? I think the law will have its due, whether that's measured in years or lives, I can't say. It's not fair. They're good people who did bad things. That should count for something. It does count. That's why we had a trial instead of a lynching. Why they got to speak and present evidence and have advocates. The system might be imperfect, but it's better than the alternative. Billy sat quietly for a moment, then asked the question Grant had been avoiding. If they hang, will you be there? Yes, they shouldn't die alone. Someone who cares should witness. That's the least I owe them. The next day, the courtroom reconvened. Judge Hawthorne took her seat, her expression grave. Claire Yang, Rose Chen, please rise. They stood still, holding hands, facing their judgment with dignity. This court has struggled with these cases more than any in my 30 years on the bench. The crimes are serious. The body count is staggering. By any normal measure, you both deserve the harshest punishment available. However, I cannot ignore the context. The San Sebastian massacre was an atrocity that our legal system failed to address. Captain Miller and his gang escaped justice through violence and intimidation. The law failed the victims, failed their families. And into that failure stepped vigilantes who took justice into their own hands. I cannot condone vigilantism, cannot set a precedent that murder is acceptable if the victim deserved it. That way lies anarchy. But I can acknowledge that these crimes were not committed for profit or pleasure. They were committed by traumatized individuals who saw no other path to justice. Therefore, this court sentences Claire Yang to time served with 15 years probation. You will report monthly to a probation officer. You will perform 500 hours of community service annually. You will not carry a firearm or engage in violence for any reason, save immediate self-defense. Violation of these terms will result in life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Rose Chen, your crimes are more recent and more numerous. This court sentences you to 5 years in territorial prison, followed by 20 years probation on the same terms as your mother. Additionally, you will receive counseling for trauma and anger management. This court recognizes that these sentences are controversial, that many will view them as too lenient, but this judge believes in the possibility of redemption, in the capacity for growth and change. You have both demonstrated that capacity. This is your chance to prove it was not merely performance. Do not waste this opportunity. Do not make me regret showing mercy. Use the time you've been given to become the women your father and husband would be proud of. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. The courtroom erupted in noise. Some cheering, some protesting. Grant sat in stunned silence, barely able to process what had just happened. They had been given a chance. Against all odds, against precedent and expectation, they had been given a chance to live. Claire and Rose collapsed into each other's arms, weeping. The bailiffs allowed them a moment before separating them for processing. Rose would be transported to prison immediately. Claire would be released into Grant's custody pending paperwork. As the crowd dispersed, Grant found himself alone with Judge Hawthorne in the hallway outside her chambers. Sheriff Grant, a word. He followed her inside where she poured them both coffee from a silver service. That was quite a gamble you took, hiding a fugitive for 3 years. Yes, ma'am. If it had gone differently, you could have been charged as an accessory, lost your badge, gone to prison yourself. I know. And yet you did it anyway. Why? Grant thought about Elijah, about Martha's letter, about 43 years of wearing a badge and the toll it had taken. Because sometimes the badge isn't about enforcing the law, it's about protecting people, even from the law itself when the law stops serving justice. Hawthorne smiled faintly. That's a dangerous philosophy for a lawman. Maybe, but it's the only way I know to sleep at night. Well, for what it's worth, your gamble paid off. Those women have a chance now. Don't let them waste it. I won't, Your Honor. Thank you for the mercy. Don't thank me. Thank your own testimony. You convinced me they were worth saving. Now prove I was right. 6 months later, Grant stood on the porch of his office in Redemption, watching the sun set. Claire had returned to town and was working full-time at Edie's Saloon, managing books and mediating disputes. Her probation officer visiting monthly reported exemplary behavior. Rose was serving her sentence in the territorial prison, but letters arrived weekly. She was attending classes, learning bookkeeping and law. Planning for the future she never thought she'd have. Billy had been sworn in as a deputy U.S. Marshal, the youngest in the service. He split his time between redemption and assignments across the territory, building the career his uncle had once had. And Grant himself had finally done what Martha had begged him to do years ago. He had retired. The badge now belonged to a younger man, someone with steady hands and clear eyes. Grant served as an advisor, a mentor, but the daily burden of law enforcement belonged to someone else. It felt strange, liberating and terrifying in equal measure. For the first time in 43 years, he woke up without the weight of that star on his chest. Claire approached carrying 2 cups of coffee. They sat together watching redemption settle into evening routine. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything, for the chance, for the faith, for not giving up. You earned it, you and Rose both. She writes that she's doing well, making friends, learning. She sounds hopeful. Good, hope's important. Keeps us moving forward instead of staying trapped in the past. They sat in comfortable silence until Claire spoke again. What will you do now? With all this free time? Grant smiled. I'm thinking about California. Martha always wanted to live by the ocean. Maybe it's time I honor that dream, even if she's not here to share it. You should. You've earned peace. So have you. What about when Rose gets out? What's the plan? Claire's face softened. We'll figure it out together. Maybe run that saloon Edie keeps threatening to sell us. Maybe something else, but together, that's what matters. Family. Family. As night fell fully, Grant felt something he had not felt in years. Contentment. The sense that his work, for all its imperfection and compromise, had meant something. That he had made a difference in lives that desperately needed it. Elijah would have been proud. Martha would have been relieved, and that was enough. In the morning, he would begin planning his move to California. would start the next chapter of a life that had been defined by service and sacrifice. But tonight he would sit with a friend and watch the stars emerge, grateful for second chances and the stubborn hope that people could be better than their worst moments. The law had had its due. Justice had been served, though not in the way anyone expected. And two broken women had found their way back to each other, proving that redemption was not just a word, but an achievable reality. Grant raised his coffee cup in a silent toast to absent friends and hard-won wisdom. Then he settled back in his chair and let peace wash over him at last. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Another answered. The eternal conversation of the desert, indifferent to human drama, but somehow comforting in its continuity. Life went on, people changed, and sometimes, just sometimes, mercy won out over judgment. That was worth living for. That was worth everything.